It's night. A strong storm begins. You live in a coastal town and watch the raging sea through the window. Lightning strikes through the sky, huge waves crash against the shore, and a downpour turns the sand into wet clay. In the morning, a lot of fish are going to be washed ashore, you think, and go to bed. It's some strange noise that wakes you up. It's like hundreds of thousands of hands clapping near your window. You go outside and see a huge crowd of people standing by the sea. The popping sound is getting louder, and its source is tons of fish washed ashore. They've been here for several hours, but are still alive. They kick and beat their slippery bodies against the sand. You see carp, trout, sardines, and even a few huge great white sharks. They are full of energy, snapping their big toothy jaws. Somehow, all fish can now breathe air like humans. You help other people throw the fish back into the water. You can see them swim away into the sea depths, but some of them come up and swim close to the surface, enjoying fresh air. You've helped almost all the fish, except for the sharks. A rescue crane arrives. It lifts each of the sharks by its tail, one by one, then carries the fish toward the sea and lets it go. From the news, you learn that air-breathing fish have been washed ashore not only in your city. People find them on beaches all over the world. Scientists and marine researchers have already gone on a sea expedition to study this unique phenomenon. Later in the evening, they announce the results of their study. Now, every sea creature that has gills can also breathe through newly developed lungs. They can stay on land for as long as they want. They only need to have some water to drink, just like other living creatures. Fish absorb water and pass it through their gills. The gills have special receptors that draw the air out of the water and send it to the fish's bloodstream. This way, their bodies receive doses of oxygen needed for life. After this, carbon dioxide is formed. It enters the fish's blood, then passes through the gills and is released back into the water. The ability to breathe through gills has remained unchanged, but the anatomy of these creatures is different now. They've developed lungs and a respiratory tract. When a fish is in the water, it closes this tract and blocks access to the lungs. This way, water doesn't get there. But when the fish is on the surface, it closes its gills and opens access to the lungs through the mouth. This amazing metamorphosis doesn't bring significant changes to the world, yet. Dolphins and whales have always had lungs. Air passes through their nostrils, which are located on the top of their heads. This opening is called the blowhole. Dolphins come up to the surface, fill their lungs with air, and go under the water for a few minutes again. Now, not only dolphins, but also all the other sea creatures swim close to the surface. You take a boat to go on a sea trip and see the shocking phenomenon with your own eyes. The further you get from the shore, the more fish you notice in the water. They jump out high and dive back in like dolphins. They seem to be enjoying their new ability. There are so many of them. Several dozen fish jump into your boat. You throw them back into the sea. You see a huge fin and turn off the engine. A shark is swimming a few hundred feet away from you. It's about the size of your boat. Fortunately, it's distracted by other fish and is not going to hunt you. You turn around and go back to the shore. Dusk is falling. You can see city lights. The sea is filled with glowing jellyfish and phytoplankton. Because of this, the water is gleaming purple and blue. You're fascinated by this sight and don't notice the lights of the town suddenly turn off. You can hear people screaming. The closer you get to the shore, the louder the screams and sounds of something getting crushed. Finally, you arrive at the pier, get out of the boat, and find that a part of the embankment has been ruined. Boats are overturned, streetlights are broken, electrical wires are torn. A long trail of transparent, viscous liquid leads from the pier to the town. You slip on this slime once or twice. The streets are empty. Cars are abandoned. Windows and houses are broken. There's garbage everywhere, and the road is also covered with ooze. You hear some kind of popping sound coming from a dark alley. It's approaching you. A small octopus appears on the road. It's moving in a spider-like manner. With the help of its tentacles, the creature climbs a car, jumps onto the wall, and crawls up. After this octopus, another one comes out. Several squid follow it. Some of them are clumsily crawling towards you. You take a step back. More and more squid and octopuses appear out of the dark alley. Some of them reach the size of a car. You see a bicycle lying on the ground and get on it. You're traveling through deserted streets with an army of octopuses crawling behind you. The ground starts shaking under the wheels of your bike. You hear a deafening roar of an unknown beast. You look back and immediately regret doing it. A huge monster, the size of a 5-story building and similar to a squid, breaks the wall of the nearest house with one hit of its colossal tentacle. The creature has come out of the darkest corner of the sea. Ever since the animal got a pair of lungs, it's been looking forward to taking a breath of fresh, clean air. Instincts brought it to the surface, where it smelled a lot of food. The city lights attracted the Kraken's attention. With its huge tentacles, the Kraken clings to the walls of buildings and the road and catches up with you. You see a tunnel straight ahead. You push the pedals of your bike as hard as you can and manage to get inside. But then you hear a strange sound behind your back. The Kraken, like an octopus, doesn't have an internal skeleton. Its body consists of muscles. That's why it can squeeze into any hole, like a liquid. The Kraken is chasing you in the tunnel, like a snake with dozens of tails, but its speed is slowing down. You accelerate and get out of the tunnel. Frightened, you travel as fast as you can and reach the nearest city by morning. Here you meet your neighbors and learn that sea monsters unexpectedly appeared in coastal cities all over the world. Fortunately, they don't stay on land for long. They've been living in the cold ocean depths for years, and their skin can't withstand sunlight. At dawn, the monsters return to the water. But sharks and other sea creatures come to the shore to have lunch more and more often. Years have passed, and they've learned to survive on land. They kick, wave their tails, push with their fins, and move clumsily along roads. The residents of coastal cities build huge walls along the beach to stop the invasion of fish and big squid. Sea creatures receive twice their usual amount of oxygen. They absorb it through the gills and fill their lungs with it. Thanks to this, the blood in their bodies circulates better and faster. This makes their muscles stronger and their brains smarter. It becomes difficult to catch fish. They easily break out of fishing nets and jump out of boats. This increases the population of all marine animals, and, especially, sharks. It becomes unsafe to travel by any kind of ship. A small fishing boat can be easily overturned by a shark. A huge cruise ship can come across several giant squid. Hundreds and thousands of years pass. More and more fish come to land. Evolution changes the structure of their bodies incredibly quickly. Some fish have grown elongated limbs. Their skin becomes slightly rougher. Their fins and tails remain, but their paws become longer. Imagine a shark with crocodile limbs. This is exactly what most fish look like now. Millions of years of evolution will pass, and fish will resemble people. But they will be covered with scales, with small fins behind the ears and a huge fin on the back. By this time, humanity will colonize many other planets, and fish will become the owners of Earth. You can feel the waves brushing up against you. You wake up and see that you're a giant, standing up on 2 feet in the sea. So much water starts dripping down like rain. You're way taller than the Statue of Liberty. You look at your hands and compare them to a small hot dog stand below you. You pick it up and fit it on the palm of your hand before crushing it by accident. Suddenly, you feel a slight sting on your ankle. You look down and see that some people are shoving you away, while most people are running away in fear. Some are taking pictures of you, while others are shouting at you to go away. You take a step to the main road and crush a car with no one inside. The people below you disperse like ants. You walk further into the city and notice there's a huge wall surrounding the rest of the city. You walk towards the city, crushing everything below you on your way. You see other giants stand up on the horizon near the sea. and walk toward the barricaded city. Something is calling all of you to go there. Many people stand on the wall and sound the alarm. More people join them to defend the wall. Others evacuate and hide in tiny holes. You notice some of the giants have very odd features and disproportionate limbs. Some are walking on all fours, while some have really long arms that can reach anything. You move a bit when you accidentally almost step on someone. She stands still. You pick her up and put her on your eye level. Both of you are maintaining eye contact. You place her on your shoulder while the other giants walk past you towards the city. They push and shove you while you're standing still. They break through the wall without any effort and ruin the city. For some reason, you snap out of this trance that was drawing you to the city. You turn around and head back to the sea with the woman still on your shoulder. You reach the deepest end of the sea and are still walking. The woman is scared and doesn't know what to do. You place her on a small island and stare at her. She can't see the sun because your head is in the way. For a while, you leave her there while you bask in the sun, trying to make sense of why you're on this planet and what made you want to save this woman. Nighttime comes and you're feeling sleepy. The woman falls asleep under a tree. You stand still while the waves rock you back and forth. Suddenly, the waves get rougher and you feel something moving in the water. You look around, but it's too dark to see what's going on. You quickly pick up the woman and place her on your shoulder. She wakes up. You see the giants swimming and walking towards you, screaming. They start chasing you, trying to catch up with you. You walk as fast as you can, disturbing the water and breaking the ocean floor. You see a cargo ship in front of you and move it aside carefully, not to damage it. But the giants chasing after you don't seem to care about the ship and sink it while trying to get to you. You feel you've reached shallower grounds, and so you start running. You're in a new country that's been leveled by the giants. The buildings are completely flat, and the debris is scattered like small breadcrumbs. In the distance, you can see some more giants waking up by the beach and staring at you. They can smell the human on your shoulder and start chasing you. They're also strange looking and have unusual features. There's no place to hide in the open, so you head to the mountains. Over there, you can hide in the valley near a large waterfall. You notice that your skin starts changing color, and you blend in with the environment. Every giant has a unique feature for them to discover. Apparently, yours is changing your skin color. The woman on your shoulder is asleep. You look at her and start feeling a sense of sympathy, like looking at a pet. You're not the same as the other giants. You don't crave destruction, but instead want to help humans. You hear some giants walking in the distance. You take a peek and see some new giants that are 3 times bigger than you. They're patrolling around looking for you, and they're getting closer. You accidentally make some noise, and they spot you. They start running after you, and you get up and start running away. You're sprinting through some rough terrain. Some other giants jump in front of you, while the ones chasing you stand behind you. You're surrounded by 5 giants that are all 3 times bigger than you. You place the woman down in a safe place and prepare to protect yourself. They try to tackle you from all sides, but you jump and dodge them. The biggest one gets his hands on you and tries to pin you down, but you slip out and push him away. The rest of them try to catch you, but you move and avoid their grasp. You see a steep cliff and head over there while they're following you. You have your back to the cliff while they're inching their way to you. They jump at you, but you duck down. They fall over the cliff and into the ocean. The biggest one is still there, since it knew what you were up to. One-on-one, you have no chance against him. You can smell the woman trying to run away into a stampede of giants heading your way. Your skin color changes, and you slip through the alpha giant and rush to the woman to save her. The alpha isn't as fast as you, so you can easily outrun it. but the stampede is about to trample her. You jump in front of them and catch the woman. The other giants are startled and angry because you saved the woman. All of the giants know about you now and are out to get you. A few days later, and they seem to be off your tail. You're now in the middle of the desert. The woman is still on your shoulder. She built herself a small shelter where she could sleep without being disturbed. You're trying your best to get out of the desert since anyone can spot you. You're tired and are in need of water. You're barely carrying your feet in the sand. You sit down, trying to keep your head up, but the sun is too intense. You're sweating a lot, and it's dripping down on the woman. She tries to speak with you, but you can't understand what she's saying. You're getting weaker and can't move anymore. It's only noon, so the sun is at its peak. You create a shady spot for the woman with your hand to protect her from the burning sun. The day passes and the night arrives. You spent all day in the sun and are now in the desert cold. It's freezing. You cup the woman and put your other hand on top to create a warm dome to protect her from the cold wind. It's pitch dark and you don't know where you're going. You just keep walking and stepping on sand dunes everywhere you go. It's daytime again. You see a large footprint of a giant like no other. Looks like it's even bigger than the huge one by the cliff. You run away as fast as you can, but there's nowhere to hide. Suddenly, you see it standing still. It towers over every other giant you've ever encountered. It's sleeping and gaining energy from the sun. Some giants are accustomed to different climates and terrains. This one is tall, and it can reach the sun for more sunlight. You tiptoe around it, making sure not to wake it, but it can feel everything around it. It's startled and starts chasing you until you reach the ocean. He isn't a fan of water, so he stays on the surface, screaming at you as you swim off.
About 8 billion inhabitants of planet Earth found out the same terrible news in one day. Someone saw it on TV. Others heard it on the phone while scrolling through social media or listening to music. Some witnessed this news in a dream while sleeping. Someone's voice said it in all languages to ensure everyone understood it. I have good news and bad news for you. Let's start with the bad news. You're all characters in YouTube videos in which your planet gets into a situation where the moon breaks in half. For the audience, it will be a hypothetical story, but for you, these events will become a reality. The good news is that I was joking. There is no good news. But don't worry, the apocalypse won't start on your planet. Maybe just a little bit. Have a nice day. At first, the entire population panics. Then, a few days later, everyone calms down. Maybe it was a mass hallucination, and the moon will be all right. But at this moment, scientists have discovered the danger. A colossal meteorite is flying towards us from the distant depths of space. This meteorite is super fast and pretty flat, but has sharp edges. Fortunately, it will miss the Earth by a few thousand miles, but the moon won't be that lucky. The meteorite flies through our Earth's only natural satellite directly in the middle. So it passes through the moon, sweeps past our planet, and flies away into distant space. At this moment, all people can't take their eyes off the moon. The meteorite cuts it perfectly in half, gently, clearly, painlessly. So, what shall we do now? Will the Earth survive this? Our satellite breaks into 2 equal parts, but fortunately, they don't fly away from each other. The moon's great gravity attracts them back like a magnet. Scientists are sure that the parts will connect in a couple of billion years, and the moon will become the same as it used to be. But the coolest thing is that people won't feel any changes. Everyone around the world will celebrate this good news. The voice was wrong. But then, another problem appears. A massive meteorite in the form of a shoe is flying from the deepest space to us. It enters our solar system and approaches the Earth at high speed. The space boot crashes into one half of the moon and then flies away. Now, the moon is definitely breaking into 2 parts. The first half remains in the same place. The second one is flying towards us. A small meteor shower begins on Earth because of the falling moon fragments, but it's not so bad. Most of these rocks are burning up in the atmosphere. But almost the entire split-off half is falling apart around the orbit of our planet. It forms a stone belt. Now the Earth is like Saturn. Rotating fragments destroy part of our artificial satellites. Communication and the internet work inconsistently. It takes people a couple of years to restore a stable connection. The International Space Station no longer exists. Luckily, all the astronauts managed to return to Earth before half the moon got to them. So, moon rocks are flying around the planet, and people see half the moon in the sky. Life doesn't change much for the first few days, but those who live on the coast of the seas and oceans notice the consequences. The moon used to influence the tides. It was flying around the Earth and made oceans take an oval shape. There were tides on the side where the moon was closer. There were ebbs on the opposite side. But now, this schedule is wrong. Half of the moon attracts less water. Yes, the moon lost half its weight and began approaching the Earth. But its gravitational force has become weaker. Seabirds, many species of fish, sea turtles, and other coastal animals may not survive these changes. Their natural instincts associated with the moon help them determine the time for getting food, breeding, and flying south. For example, tiny turtles expect a strong tide in the morning. They run to the water, but the water doesn't reach them. Turtles can't hide in the ocean in time and become dinner for seagulls. Crabs can't lay eggs because the tide has started earlier than usual. Wolves go mad in the woods. They howl loudly every night and can't stop. The whole natural world can't understand what's going on. The human body is also feeling some discomfort. Many people have low and high blood pressure, and some experience severe headaches. Half of the moon changes the entire ecosystem of the planet. Adapting to new conditions will take several tens, maybe hundreds of years. A couple of weeks pass, and people notice the days are now shorter. The moon always slowed the Earth's rotation and made one day last 24 hours. The Earth is spinning faster now. The night and the morning come earlier than everyone is used to. Earth rotation speed has increased and reduced the number of hours per day to 15. People suffer from insomnia or oversleeping. The body needs time to get used to it. Work schedules are changing all over the world. Previously, people came to the office at 9 and left at 6. Now, they arrive at 7 and leave at 2 p.m. Sleep time got shorter, and people are really sad because of this. Progress slows down because the short working time. The technologies of the future are now 20 to 30 years late. Hourly pay remains the same, so bosses now pay less for fewer working hours. The whole moon stabilized the weather and climate on the planet. Look at Mars. It has 2 small moons. They quickly spin around it and rock Mars around on its axis. As a result, strong winds, sandstorms, and thunderstorms often happen on the red planet. Now the half of the moon that approached us takes the Earth out of stable rotation. This changes the seasonal temperatures in the world. It even gets hotter in hot places. And snowstorms are raging in cold regions. There are short, massive downpours instead of sunny weather. A typical breeze can grow into a hurricane and small waves into a tsunami. The seasons are changing faster now. Winters are colder and summers are hotter. Changing the rotation of the planet affects the Earth's magnetic field. Since the compass and navigation systems are unstable now, we need to recalculate where the north and south are. Birds can't fly south to wait out the winter since they don't know what direction to fly. Their inner compass is broken. Several hundred years have passed. People are entirely accustomed to the new conditions on Earth. New species of animals and fish have appeared. Birds can navigate the sky by the moon again. The planet's economy has been restored. Hourly wages have become higher. People now get enough sleep from 5 to 6 hours a day and work for 4 to 5 hours. The reduction of day and night has also affected the entertainment industry. Movies now last 1 hour. One episode of some TV series lasts 30 minutes. Life goes faster. An average person now lives to be 96 years old. In fact, the passage of time hasn't changed at all. Its calculus did. Several thousand years have passed. People look different now. Now they have big eyes that absorb more light. half of the moon doesn't shine as bright as the whole thing, so the nights have become darker. It took the human eye a couple of thousand years to develop the ability to see clearly in this new dark. Animals need to navigate better in these conditions, so their eyes have become larger and more sensitive. During all this time, people have cleared the orbit of moon rocks. Several space stations fly around our planet. And again, people hear this strange voice that once told them that they were all characters in one hypothetical YouTube video. This time, the voice says, "Your story ends because the video ends. I'm sorry. Good night."
It all started with a minor change on our planet. At first, people noticed the moon had become brighter and a little bigger, but nobody paid attention to this. The moon affected tides all over the world. The water flooded the beaches, but it wasn't a tragedy. A lot of fish came close to the shores. People found giant squid, anglerfish, and other creatures next to the coast, although they usually live in the dark depths. New, stranger things happen every day. Birds no longer fly to the south in winter. They gather in huge groups, flying around cities with no purpose. The moon used to help them navigate in nature, so they can't figure out which way to fly anymore. In the boundless waters of the world's oceans, ship captains notice that compasses are now unstable. The arrow is pointing in different directions since the Earth's magnetic poles have changed. People realize the moon has started to approach Earth for an unknown reason. The moon's gravity affects the gravity of our planet. This entails changes in the climate, the behavior of all living beings, and the magnetic field. Now, it rains in the driest places and gets hot in the coldest lands. It's knocking down ecosystems all over the planet. People living near forests hear wolves howling all the time. The moon drives these animals mad. The Earth's natural satellite is growing in size and lights up the night much brighter. Nothing critical has happened yet. People don't panic because they don't want to believe the end is coming. But then, one day, the moon reaches a critical point. You're walking down the street listening to music, and at that moment, someone pushes you. Okay, maybe that guy is late for work. You keep walking, and a girl coming by hits your shoulder. "I'm sorry," she says, and goes away. You've noticed the fear in her eyes. You look ahead and see people running towards you. You take off your headphones and hear screams and sirens. People leave their cars and run away. Hundreds of seagulls are flying in the sky. You hear a strange noise among all the sounds of chaos. It seems to be water. How is this possible? You're in the city center, a few miles from the shore. But there's no time to think. You notice a huge wave flooding the streets and heading straight to you. You run into a building and go up to the 10th floor. From here, you're watching the water filling the city. The strong stream blows all cars, one-story buildings, and trees off the road. You notice a shark and other fish in the water. People are hiding in houses and on the roofs. The whole city is quickly plunging into a catastrophe. The TV is working in the building where you're hiding. You learn that floods are occurring all over the world. Massive tsunamis cover coastal cities. In some places, waves reach the height of a 30-story building. Many towns have been washed off the face of the earth. The moon is too close to Earth, and massive floods are just the beginning. The moon flies around Earth and helps to keep our home on its axis. The moon provides climate stability and helps living organisms develop. But now, this balance is broken. The moon is approaching and changing our planet's gravity. Earth can tilt slightly to the side and provoke massive floods around the world. Imagine that you're holding a round glass of water. Tilt it a little. See how the liquid moves from one side to another? The same thing is happening now with the oceans. But the moon is not just approaching us. It's flying around the planet and getting closer with each circle. It causes natural disasters in different locations on Earth all the time. Now the ocean floods one side, and a few hours later, another. So you see all the water going back from the streets to the shore. The oceans may return to the city again by the end of the day. Wait a minute. It seems the end of the day has already come. You notice that the sky has become dark. It's weird, because it's only 3 p.m. The moon changes Earth's rotation speed and makes the day go faster. The moon covers almost the entire sky and brightly illuminates our planet. You see huge lunar craters. It's so close that you can still see it even when the sun shines. In some places, the passing moon obscures the sun. The water is leaving the streets and everyone goes outside. At this moment, an earthquake begins. The road is cracking and the houses are collapsing. There are landslides on the street. Tectonic plates are shifting all over the planet. Imagine two magnetic balls that are approaching each other. So, one ball is the moon, and the second one is Earth's core. What do you think will happen to what's above the core? That's hundreds of thousands of miles of the Earth's crust. And now, it's all moving. Destructive cracks are emerging all over the world. The planet's highest mountains break down and turn into a pile of stones. The seabed cracks and releases magma from the underground depths. Volcanoes wake up and erupt magma. Clouds of volcanic ash cover the sky from the sun and the glowing moon. But the scariest thing is still ahead. A collision is inevitable. The moon flies around the planet like a ball in a round glass with a hole in the center. This force drives clouds all over the planet. Now there's a thunderstorm, but in 5 minutes, it will be snowing. Then the night comes, and it starts raining. Water droplets consist of mud and volcanic ash. It's difficult for people to breathe without gas masks. Atmospheric pressure is constantly changing. Some people experience severe migraines, and some have sore joints. But there's no time to think about your health. Humanity needs to figure out how to save itself from the collision. A new gravitational order will come when the moon crashes into Earth. Continents will change their shape. They will combine into one giant piece of land or split into 100 smaller ones. The energy of the collision can burn all the oxygen in the atmosphere and make the planet unsuitable for life. Hiding underground also makes no sense because of deep earthquakes. People decide to spend their last hours with loved ones and their families. The moon is getting closer. It's now at the same distance as the International Space Station. The moon covers the sky. Many cities are in the shadows because of the waves. Tsunamis, several miles in height, crash down on the ground. Millions of tons of magma collide with the ocean. Billions of gallons of water just evaporate. Moisture rises into the air, mixes with ash, and floods the land in the form of giant cumulus clouds. You've accepted the complete destruction of the planet. But something strange happens to the moon at this moment. You notice giant cracks appear on it. The moon slowly begins to divide into two parts. Both halves crumble into hundreds of large pieces. It's just falling apart. The Earth doesn't have a natural satellite anymore. It's just a pile of giant space rocks. But why is this happening? There's a space around our planet called the Roche limit. In this place, the gravity of Earth is stronger than that of the moon. This means that the forces holding the moon together are weaker than those that tear it apart. People are cheering. The Roche limit has saved the planet. The moon won't hit us. It breaks up into millions of fragments and forms a circle around our globe. Now, Earth looks like Saturn. A belt of moonstones surrounds us. Huge chunks destroy everything in their path, all the space debris. The satellites are no longer working. Humanity loses its means of communication and navigation. People will have to use paper maps again. The moon held our planet's orbit at a certain angle before these events. Now the axis is tilted differently. One hemisphere becomes closer to the sun, and the other plunges into shadow. The North Pole and the Arctic may turn into hot deserts, and the equator of the planet may be covered with ice. Winter and summer can last for years. The moon's remnants fly around Earth, but some of them fall on our planet. Lunar meteor showers destroy cities and create giant craters. All these events lead to the massive destruction of life on Earth. It will take hundreds of thousands of years to adapt to the new world. When you think of a volcano, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Streams of red, steaming hot lava pouring over the sides? Dark clouds of ash rising high into the sky? Maybe you think of a relaxing hot spring. Ah, that's nice. Well, we all imagine one thing, a cone-shaped mountain looming over the horizon. But it can be as green and lush as any other mountain. At the top, of course, there's a giant hole, like an opening that goes all the way down. Inside, there's lava and gases being pushed outside. Lava is so hot that if you were standing at the top of the volcano and looked down, your face would feel as red as the color of that liquid rock oozing out. A volcanic eruption never comes without consequences for us. And I'm not just talking about people living nearby. The impacts are usually felt on a global scale, too. Can't fly for a while because of the blanket of ash released in the air. Not to mention, it might be a bit tricky to breathe. Carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and plenty of other toxic gases whose names immediately take you back to your high school chemistry class. Funny enough, most of that cloud rising out of a volcano is just water. Well, vaporized from those scalding temperatures. But before any volcano erupts, it goes through stages like an angsty teen. First, magma, that's lava before it erupts onto the surface and gets its name change, starts moving underneath the volcano. This causes earthquakes that get worse and more dangerous over time. Then, steam and different gases start spewing out of holes in the planet's crust. Our Earth resembles a tea kettle about to whistle. When the gas emissions and earthquakes get more massive, it usually means the volcano is about to blow its top. But those first stages can take years before an eruption happens. Then, the magma starts building up. With more and more pressure, it's planning to make its great escape. It's hard to notice this happening if you don't have the proper equipment. Good thing scientists do, and they've got us covered. The volcano becomes more active by the minute. Ash starts coming out and spreading in the air, creating ominous clouds that turn day to night. With the magma building up, an eruption is imminent. Then, boom! The surface gives in under the pressure below. The magma makes its exit. It's now lava, spewing out the top and flowing down the sides of the mountain. None of this sounds very appealing. So, what if it never happened? What if there were never any volcanoes at all? Would Earth still be the same? Not at all. If volcanoes never existed, there wouldn't be an atmosphere. When our planet was still just a young pup, volcanic gases are what created our protective bubble that allows you and me to breathe right now. They also played a big part in shaping the land and oceans. 4 billion years ago, Earth was still forming. It didn't look anything like the pale blue dot we know today. It was red hot, and the water was trapped under the crust. It wasn't until the surface started to cool down and solidify that the water was finally able to escape. Volcanoes acted sort of like a tear in the fabric of our planet. Water vapor would condense in the atmosphere and then fall back down as rain. It rained for so long that the third planet from the sun started turning into the blue ball we're more familiar with. In fact, there's even a theory that all the water on Earth came from volcanoes. And without water, of course, life wouldn't have been able to form. Land formation went through a similar process. You see, our planet was a pretty rough place to be when it was forming. It was a molten surface with fields of lava and constant volcanic eruptions and space rocks always crashing into it, because there was no atmosphere to protect it. When it started cooling down, a good solid surface formed, but the hot material underneath was still boiling and bubbling, and it continued making its way up. The crust would move and form thick layers with the material that was rising up. Over time, these layers became more permanent. Volcanic eruptions were still happening, but the first landmass had finally formed. Okay, we'll take the best part of volcanoes, an atmosphere. So what if they stopped erupting long after we got our protective breathable shield? Still not good. For starters, volcanoes created the most fertile soil. Around Naples, you have the famous Mount Vesuvius. The soil quality there is incredibly rich, and that's thanks to 2 huge volcanic eruptions, one that happened 35,000 years ago and another 12,000 years ago. Sure. Sure, these volcanoes caused a lot of short-term damage, but in the long run, these soils were fertilized by them. Now the region grows all kinds of citrus fruits, olives, grapes, cherries, and of course, their staple, tomatoes. There'd be none of that without rich volcanic soil, and Naples is by far not the only example like this. Bacteria, the first living organisms, lived in hot water. Scientists have discovered fossilized microorganisms older than 4 billion years. They thrived in hydrothermal vents. Those are fissures on the sea floor, and they're usually near volcanically active places. This means that without volcanoes, we wouldn't have land, water, or even the first life forms that, as the theory goes, would eventually evolve into all the creatures we have today. Could life have still developed on Earth without these explosive mountains? Doubtful. Okay, fair enough. We want our atmosphere and life. So let's say volcanoes stopped erupting today, after we already have all these benefits. Well, we're sort of already there, based on this story. At the start, there was only one continent, Pangaea. It was a supercontinent surrounded by one massive continuous superocean. Volcanic activity by this time had finally calmed down, and this meant all that energy would gather below the Earth's crust. Here's a little diagram. First, we have the Earth's inner core. Then there's the outer core. Next up, we have our convection currents. Magma is next in line. After that, the oceanic crust. And at the very top, we have our ocean and our continental crust. The reason Pangaea eventually broke up into the separate continents we have today is because of plate tectonics. It's not like the crust is all one solid piece. It's broken up into big chunks, or plates, that are always moving. And it's all still moving today. Yes, the land you're standing on right now is sort of surfing on that layer of convection currents. It's a slow process, so it's not like you can feel it. Pangaea didn't break apart all at once. It took tens of millions of years. When the plates move, they cause earthquakes and volcanic activity. They create mountains too. It's good for our planet as well, because the Earth gets to sort of renew its old crust. If there was no volcanic activity now, the pressure underneath the Earth's crust would keep building up. It'd get to a boiling point the continents couldn't handle anymore, and eventually, they'd start splitting into more numerous and smaller masses. Volcanoes are still useful to us till this day. For one, they cool our atmosphere. Their eruptions release sulfur gas. It combines with water in our atmosphere and cools it at its lowest level, which is where we live and breathe. There's also an excellent use for their heat. Geothermal power plants harness the energy coming from deep inside the Earth and turn its heat into steam. We then use that steam and turn it into electricity. This is the case for our friends in New Zealand and Iceland, since they live in places with high underground temperatures. Volcanic material can also be made into blocks for building stuff. It can be grounded down to make cement too. If we want, we can even search volcanoes for precious minerals like gold, copper, and sulfur. And who can forget about hot springs? Tourism to places like Yellowstone and Iceland wouldn't be the same without them. And who doesn't love a nice steamy dip in the ones safe for swimming? Oh yeah. In the end, volcanoes aren't so bad after all. Our beautiful Earth wouldn't be what it is without them. You turn on the tap in the bathroom and rinse your face with warm water. After a few seconds, a loud grinding noise comes from the water pipes. In the next second, pieces of ice fall into your hands. You jump up in surprise and hear a neighbor screaming behind the wall. He's probably taking a shower. You pull the handle, but the water doesn't flow. Then you notice a thick layer of ice sticks out of the tap. It looks like an icicle. You go to the kitchen and take a jug of water, but you can't pour any into a glass. The water's frozen. The same thing happens with the kettle. You can hear the pipes roaring. All the water in the city has frozen, and this has led to a water supply collapse. The water's flowing freely through the winding pipes. It's going up, down, and to the sides through a complex sewer system. Then it turns into ice and expands. Plastic and metal pipes can't stand it. They pop and tear apart. If the water becomes liquid again, the city will be instantly flooded. All sewage water will accumulate underground and rise. But now, the water has frozen for a few seconds, so millions of tons of ice lie under the streets. This is happening all over the world, and no one knows the reason for it. Even in the tropical jungles of the Amazon and in the African savannas, all lakes, rivers, and ponds have frozen despite the high air temperature. The huge amount of ice lowers the temperature of the entire planet. It gets cooler in the parched deserts, and it gets even colder in the north. You turn on the kettle to melt the water, but it doesn't work. A hydroelectric power plant that feeds the city has broken down and disconnected people from electricity. You go outside and see scared people who can't take a sip from frozen bottles. The city fountain has turned into an ice sculpture. The lake in the park is an ice rink where you can play hockey. You're shivering because it has quickly become cold outside. Several people make a bonfire in the city square and put bottles next to it. This helps to melt the water. You decide to warm up by the fire and watch the news on your phone. All the waterfalls on the planet look like they're frozen in time. Right now, the ships sailing in the seas and oceans are stuck. To get to the shore, people need to hollow out thousands of miles of ice. This is impossible, so helicopters with rescuers fly to their side to save the sailors. A small piece of ice falls on the screen of your phone and leaves a scratch. An icy rain begins. Drops of various shapes and sizes fall to the ground and break like glass. All the people are hiding under their roofs. All the animals are running under the trees. Icy rain hits the ground, scratches cars, breaks windows. When it ends, a collapse begins. Sharp ice floes crunch under your feet. Cars can't drive normally. Traffic jams form on the roads. At the moment when the water froze, many surfers were catching waves on the coast of many countries. Here's one of them rowing to a big wave, standing on the surfboard. The wave rises, twists, and freezes. At a huge speed, the surfer slides on the ice and falls. He looks at the frozen ocean and goes home to put on his skates. Fishing has stopped all over the world. To catch a fish, you need to drill the ice and carefully remove the frozen fish. All the sea creatures are alive. They're simply in cryogenic sleep. Every day, rescuers pull out people stuck in the ice. Imagine you're swimming and everything around you freezes. You can't move. It's nearly impossible to breathe. Your head is now covered with an ice crust. All you can do is scream and move your face muscles. You spend hours calling for help and waiting for rescuers to take you out from the ice. Cargo transportation on huge ships has stopped. Import and export of various goods and natural resources are impossible now. This causes a shortage of fuel in some countries, since oil can't be delivered quickly by ship. Other countries don't get enough vegetables and fruits. This causes high prices for many things, and the world's economy becomes unstable. People buy up all the home heaters to melt water in bottles. The water supply is broken, and everybody goes outside with buckets to collect pieces of icy rain falling from the sky. At home, they melt liquid in iron buckets. This is impossible in your city, since the work of the hydroelectric power station still isn't restored. You and other residents create bonfires right on the streets to melt ice. Meanwhile, a real catastrophe is going on in the seas and oceans. Seaweed and phytoplankton absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. More than 50% of the fresh air on Earth is provided thanks to this process. Now, everything is frozen and oxygen production is suspended. After a few months, people will begin to notice that they have breathing problems. More and more carbon dioxide is accumulating in the atmosphere. Because of this, the blue sky turns gray. The rain doesn't feed the forests and jungles anymore. It destroys them. Trees, leaves, and plants are torn under the ice drops. The harvest is spoiling. People are running out of food supplies all over the world. Volcanoes emit a lot of carbon dioxide and heat. It can thaw all the frozen water, but it'll take millions of years. The Earth's temperature has dropped, which slows down the melting. Only on the coasts of the southern countries does the ice slowly begin to melt. But this is not enough to save the planet from disaster. The most destructive processes occur not on the water, but on the land. Cities located at the foot of the hills and mountain villages are being evacuated. Residents take their things and leave their houses as far away as possible because lakes and rivers are flowing inside many mountains and underground. And when all this water freezes, it begins to expand inside the underground channels. The same happened to the city pipes. When everything starts to collapse inside the mountain, a landslide begins. Rocks and mountains roll down onto small towns. Earthquakes carry trees and houses underground. This is happening all over the planet. To escape from the icy rains, people create umbrellas of light metal. If you decide to go outside in bad weather, you need to wear headphones or earplugs because the ringing of falling ice on the metal umbrella is deafening. It's necessary to protect plants and crops from ice. People put huge transparent domes over farms and fields. The domes are equipped with transparent, high-strength fabric. Ice pieces don't break through it, but remain on the dome. When the sun begins to melt the ice, it seeps through the grid and waters the ground. Scientists create super powerful electric stations and install them at different spots of the ocean. The stations are equipped with big drills that make a long tunnel into the ocean depths. Then, a powerful nuclear reactor is placed there. It's covered with a protective shield to avoid radiation entering the water. The reactor starts working and melts the water around. When a huge amount of water is melted, the reactor is removed from the ocean. Then, the warm water begins to heat the frozen water. These processes take decades. While the seas are melting, people in cities are reinstalling sewage systems. First, a powerful heater is placed inside each house, which slowly melts the ice. Then, plumbers replace the broken pipes with new ones. The global temperature is slowly recovering, but icy rains continue to fall. To solve this problem, scientists synthesize a harmless chemical reagent. Each day, supersonic planes fly through rain clouds and spray the substance that turns small ice flows into water drops. The freezing water in the rocks slowly melts, and this provokes new landslides. To escape from earthquakes, seismologists create a scanner that monitors the activity of underground water. The scanner processes data on the ice and ground temperatures and the density of air and soil and creates an earthquake model. People can find out in advance when the disaster will begin. You just wanted to heat up a slice of leftover pizza, but something went terribly wrong. As soon as you touched the device, you felt a jolt, as if something had pushed you. You saw sparks, heard something blow up. Then, darkness. Oh, it feels as though your head is going to implode. What happened? Oh, the microwave. You got an electric shock. Good thing you're alive and more or less okay. Even better, there's no fire raging in your apartment. Moaning, you get up. Your hands shaking, you pick up a glass to pour yourself some water. But the next moment, you drop it to the floor. The thing is much heavier than you expected. But that's not all. Now, it's also yellowish and not transparent. After examining it, you have to admit that the substance looks pretty much like gold. You laugh at yourself and then take your new glass to a jewelry appraiser. You're absolutely dazed after leaving their office. Your glass is indeed made up of the purest gold ever. The fact that the appraiser told you that the gold was a bit strange slips your mind. You've got more urgent mysteries to solve, like how on earth did the glass become golden? It must have happened at the moment you touched it. But after that, you held onto handrails, doorknobs, and whatnot. You even shook the appraiser's hand. You come home and get down to work. You touch your sofa, bed, pillows, cups, plates, silverware, and suddenly a spoon in your hand becomes gold. Your ability does work, but not always. Even so, you're going to be rich because, gold. This metal is extremely valuable. It doesn't corrode, is easy to smelt, and is rare enough for people to appreciate it. You start thinking of all your dreams that will finally come true. You can go on vacation to some exotic islands and buy the house of your dreams. Little did you know at the time what a terrible disaster your newly acquired ability would cause. Time passes, and you notice you turn things into gold more and more often. Soon it happens every third time you touch something. And the day comes when every single thing you pick up immediately becomes gold. After cheering for a good 5 minutes, you realize it's actually not that great. How are you going to cook, sleep, take your dog for a walk? With growing horror, you understand your ability might end up being a curse, similar to the one that King Midas had. There's a myth about a monarch who was living his comfortable and rich life in a huge castle. But it was never enough for the man. He was way more ambitious than that. He wanted everything he touched to turn into gold. It definitely rings a bell. But when his wish was granted, the king found out it was the most horrible thing that had ever happened to him. You shudder and decide to think about something that doesn't make you so stressed. Like, how is the stuff you do even possible from a scientific point of view? Do you simply change the atoms of whatever you choose to touch? Let's say it's a remote control. Then, as soon as you pick it up and make it golden, it'll immediately become many times denser and heavier. The gold atoms won't appreciate the way they're squeezed together. They start to push back against each other. Boom! And the remote control would explode with enormous force. But it doesn't happen. This means your ability works in a different way. For example, what if you don't change the atoms but simply rearrange them? This would explain why the appraiser was so surprised and called your gold glass strange. This gold is kind of foamy, with loads of tiny gaps inside. Suddenly, it dawns on you, and you feel even more horrified than before. You must be very, very careful now. What if you lean down to touch your dog? What if you accidentally hug your brother or touch your friend's hand? After panicking for an hour or so, you remember a good friend of yours is a scientist. All right, time to visit her. After overcoming her initial shock, your friend jumps into action. Soon, you've got a solution. A pair of gloves made of a special material. You have to wear these gloves at all times. Your friend goes into details, trying to explain how the gloves will protect the world from you. But it sounds extremely scientific. You lose track of her explanation and stop listening after half a minute. Your life is both easier and more difficult now. You don't have to control yourself around other people, but at the same time, you have to learn to take a shower, eat, play volleyball, and pet your dog, all while wearing your gloves. Luckily, it doesn't take much time for you to get used to your new style. But then, on a sunny day, everything spirals out of control. You're outside, in the park. Your dog seems to have got the zoomies and is sprinting around in circles. That's when your left hand starts itching inside the glove. Oh, nothing bad will happen if I... And you pull off the glove. Your dog chooses this moment to crash into your legs. You lose your footing and start falling forward. You see everything happening around you as if in slow-mo. 1 second, and your gloveless hand touches the ground. Another second, and golden-colored waves start spreading away from you. They're turning everything you can see into gold. And then, you're suddenly floating in the air. What's going on? Remember that very first glass you turned into gold? It didn't change its shape or size because it wasn't large enough. But for the entire planet, this is a big deal. The gold you create is spongy, but you can't have a spongy Earth. Its gravity won't let you. It starts to squeeze the planet, and succeeds. The not-so-microscopic gaps between the atoms making up our beautiful once-blue globe disappear, and Earth starts to shrink at breakneck speed. In no time, its radius gets 1/3 smaller than before. But back to your current situation. You've never been stuck in a falling elevator, but you think this is what it must feel like. You've got an impression that someone suddenly pulled the lever responsible for Earth's gravity and switched it off. At first, you're terrified. What if when this whole falling situation comes to a stop, you'll hit the ground with enormous force? But it hasn't happened yet, and you relax a bit. The thing is that instead of moving away or coming closer, the ground seems to be falling together with you. From your vantage point, you see water floating in the air. It can't be the oceans or seas. They turned into gold at the same moment the ground did. Meanwhile, the water in the air starts to form droplets, and you realize that's all the liquid that was in the atmosphere before the accident. That's what you decided to call the catastrophe you had caused. The only other living beings you spot are birds. They must have been in the air when the change occurred. Sometime later, you feel a sting. A mosquito! That's how you find out that besides birds, there are also flying bugs. In about 10 minutes, the planet stops shrinking. It's probably reached the size it needs. If this strange world worked as it should, you would have crashed to the ground at a speed of almost 20,000 miles per hour. But for some mysterious reason, it doesn't happen. Phew, I'm still alive, so it can't be so bad, you think. But then, almost immediately, another thought makes you change your opinion. On the planet turned into gold, where are you going to find food and drinking water? What will happen to the atmosphere without trees and algae that produce oxygen? But it's just the beginning. The planet gets suddenly squeezed with enormous force. That's why the temperatures in its core will soon become as high as they are in the core of a star. Also, when the planet finishes collapsing in on itself, a powerful shockwave will catapult its atmosphere up into space. In the end, the red-hot ball of plasma that our planet will eventually turn into will cool down. Earth will turn into a shiny ball of gold hanging somewhere out there between Mars and Venus. You'll figure it out in no time. But right now, you are standing in the middle of a vast gold plain. In your head, there are only questions and not a single answer.
So you're in the countryside for several days and have been resting in your wooden house. In the morning, you wake up feeling as if you're floating away somewhere. You look out the window and see everything's moving. You run out of the house, but after a single step, your foot sinks slightly into the ground. There was no rain, the ground isn't wet, but it feels like you stepped on a soft bed. You see your own and your neighbors' wooden houses somehow carried away. The villagers don't understand what's happening. You meet one of your friends and he says his house has disappeared completely, as if it was stolen by someone. You remember his expensive red brick house and can't imagine anyone taking it away. Next, you notice all the floating houses are wooden. The others, made of bricks, have also disappeared. Right in the village center, something like a mudslide is formed, pulling everything around into it. You try to run, but the ground seems to swim under your feet. It doesn't look like an earthquake. It feels as if you're on a huge raft in the middle of the sea. At first, it's difficult for you to keep balance, and you fall a couple of times. Several more mudslides are forming around. You see cars ahead, run to them to call for help, and find the road's gone. You run up to a car in which the young woman's listening to a radio. All channels broadcast the same message. For some reason, rocks have disappeared all over the world. Now, imagine that you're a professional mountaineer climbing a steep mountain for several hours. At last, you've reached the top. You raise your hands and shout with delight. A second later, the cry of joy turns into one of horror. The mountain dissipates right beneath you. You don't believe your eyes, but you're falling, fortunately, right into some water. You rise up from the deep and see a sandy beach where the mountain was just moments ago. You swim to the shore, but it seems to be carried away. The sand hasn't gone because it's made of pieces of quartz, not stone. Not only rocks on the surface disappeared, but tectonic plates too, which made the whole landscape to change. Everest becomes no more than a low hill of snow and ice. Rocks are disappearing all over the world, causing global calamities. There are no more hills on the planet. If you want to see the world from high up, go to Antarctica and climb a huge glacier there. Any houses built of concrete, brick, or clay are dissipating since those materials are made of crushed rock. All over the world, humanity loses monuments. Modern art exhibitions and historical museums are losing their stone and clay exhibits. Rich art lovers bought stone sculptures at auctions for millions of dollars yesterday. And this morning, they woke up with nothing, not even a roof over their heads. Jewelry made from precious stones has gone. Only metals remain. Before the incident, the main reserves of metals were hidden in the rocks, so now they lie on the ground or deep in the soil. You can walk down the street and find pieces of gold, silver, and other valuables just lying around. But people aren't into wealth right now. They run away from their homes, leaving the city's remains. All roads and skyscrapers are ruined. Metal fittings and glass fall to the ground. Huge mud vortices form all over the world and pull everything into themselves like black holes. Wood becomes the most valuable resource. People frantically cut down trees and build wooden houses. Scientists around the globe are dumbfounded. They can't work in new conditions. Labs and research centers are destroyed, and a lot of scientific stuff is buried under the rubble. Someone comes up with a hypothesis that the molecular composition of rocks suddenly changed and they vanished into thin air. Several months have passed. People are getting used to the new way of life. There are no metal processing plants, so everyone learns to handle iron, aluminum, and other metals by themselves. Metal detectors easily find these materials underground. Sometimes you have to dig a lot to get it. Construction rules change. No one builds concrete foundations anymore. Everyone strives for ease and practicality. People live in small wooden houses and insulate them with glass, cotton, and wool. During all this time, you have developed an incredible sense of inner balance. It's hard to knock you down because frequent earthquakes give you a lot of practice. Also, you feel the slightest ground movements. You always travel light and can recognize a coming mudslide in advance. To prepare for the coming winter, you go on a hike to get metal, trees, and sand for insulation. Soon you realize you won't need it as you feel the heat coming directly from under the ground. The heat from the core now reaches the surface since a thick layer of rocks disappeared. Sooner or later, the soil will be so hot that it will be difficult to walk on it barefoot. Snow falls, but it melts before hitting the ground. The air warms up so much in winter that people walk in light clothes. In a few hundred years, our planet will lose huge water reserves. The liquid will evaporate, condense into huge clouds, and rain down, then evaporate again. There will be less and less water. The heating of the ocean will cause the extinction of phytoplankton and algae, which provide the Earth with much of the oxygen. Next, the trees will dry out because of lack of moisture. Or the world ocean will cool the core, and then we'll lose the Earth's magnetic field. In this case, the work of the atmosphere will be disrupted, and we won't be able to protect ourselves from cosmic radiation. In any case, humanity will need to prepare to move house. Without stone, it's difficult to mine metal and build spaceships, but we've got some advantage too. Thanks to the open access to the Earth's heat, humanity receives unlimited supplies of energy. From the uncovered metals, people build simple machines that can find and mine even more metals. Then more complex mechanisms appear. The scale of work is expanding, and all this is thanks to the Earth's inner energy. Work on the creation of a new wooden-metal civilization is in full swing 7 days a week. Many lakes and rivers around the world have completely dried up. The lack of water is replenished by the glaciers melting, but not for long. The weather is getting warmer every month, and the ground becomes more unstable. Several house security systems to avoid mudslides become very popular. If a mudslide begins under the house, a special device concentrates all the heat inside in a single point and creates hot airflow. Next, the roof opens and a huge canvas ball is released, which is then filled with the collected heat. In a few seconds, the ball rises into the sky and lifts the whole house with its inhabitants. Sometimes, when too many mudslides occur, you can watch thousands of flying houses fill the sky. Each dwelling has a steering wheel that can control the flight and choose the direction. When the house arrives to a safe area, it slowly lands, the hot airflow is cut off, and the balloon folds into the roof. It's getting too hot on Earth. It's hard for people to live here. Fortunately, this will end soon. People have created technology that can send you on a journey through space. No, it's not a huge arc. People couldn't unite on one place to build it, as the landscape of the planet is always changing. Instead, hundreds of millions of houses are flying into space. They're equipped with superdrives, oxygen, food supplies, and solar panels. All houses are connected into a single network, and people maintain communication. If something breaks in one house or it runs out of fuel, the rest will come to help. People leave Earth's orbit and watch as their home planet slowly melts. It resembles an egg that has been boiled for too long. Streams of magma pour out of the soil, lightning lashes out of the black clouds. Our planet becomes as hot as it was at the time of its birth. Fortunately, you won't have to fly far. Humans are going to colonize Mars.
You're trying to sneak into the dark labyrinths of the ancient pyramids in search of immortality. You open the puzzle lock on the door and hear a loud rattle. Everything around you begins to shake, and you see a huge door open. The room is full of gold and ancient scrolls. A large golden bowl falls right at your feet, but you kick it aside and move forward because you came here for a different purpose. Suddenly, you hear footsteps. You hide behind a pillar quickly, and you see a man appear from the depths of the room. You're scared because the old man looks just like a living mummy. His skin is dry and stretched over his skeleton. He drags his long hair behind him like a train of a dress, and he's smiling. The man invites you to sit next to him. It turns out that this old man is the last person of an ancient civilization that wanted to discover the secret of immortality. And they succeeded. 3,000 years ago, this tribe held their ritual. They danced around a fire and a huge cauldron. They caused a great storm with their dance. And a second later, a huge bolt of lightning struck the cauldron. There was a blue column of light for several minutes. During this time, the whole tribe continued to dance and sing. When the storm was over, the tribal leader came up to the cauldron. There were only a few drops left. He poured them into a flask and drank. The next second, his body started glowing and he felt stronger than ever before. It was the elixir of immortality. This man had recently celebrated his 3,000th birthday. He received all the knowledge available to a man of his time. He wandered the world and taught other people, but then he strangely decided to lock himself in a pyramid and live in eternity alone. As a reward for your intelligence and dexterity, the old man gives you that very flask of elixir. You drink a few drops and feel a burning sensation spread all over your body. Your hands get tremendously powerful. The fire subsides, and from that moment on, you are immortal. There's one condition though. You'll live forever, but your body will age infinitely. One day, you'll turn into a skinny old man. You return home, and hundreds of journalists are waiting for you when you get off the plane. Flashing cameras, microphones. Now you're a real celebrity, and you have to decide how to spend your endless time on Earth. And while your body is young, you decide to do everything you were afraid of before. You spend the next 20 years of your life traveling the world. You've been to Everest, the highest mountain in the world. And you've been down into the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth. You've surfed in Hawaii and skied in the Alps. You've even made it to the North Pole on a dog sled. Finally, you've been to the International Space Station as a tourist. You're not afraid of anything because you know you'll live forever. Now you look 40 years old, and when you go to a nightclub to dance till morning, everyone looks at you with amazement. But you feel so young. So it's time for some new hobbies. Breakdancing, why not? Oh, here's why. You do a stunning move, and your bones crack like an old man's. That's because you're 50 years old now. It's time for a career change, and you decide that you need to acquire every single piece of knowledge that is available to humanity. It takes you 10 years to get an education at the world's best universities. You understand how the mechanism of our civilization works, and you manage it. And now, besides immortality, you have a huge fortune. But you look in the mirror and you don't feel happy. You begin to age. Your hair is no longer as silky as it used to be, and there are wrinkles all over your face. But 60 years is nothing compared to the infinity you have to live. So now, your goal is to find a way to extend the youthfulness of your body. To do that, you take out your microscope and start studying the aging process. Our body is like a huge puzzle of big blocks. Those blocks are the organs. They're made up of smaller blocks, which are tissues. They group together to form a functioning organ. All the tissues are made up of much smaller blocks, which are cells. When we're young, our cells are small and active. They keep multiplying and renewing. It keeps our tissues and organs as good as new. But as we age, the cells lose this ability. They multiply less actively, increase in size, and perform poorly. And like old car parts, they start to malfunction and break down, and you get the check engine light on. So you work in the lab to create a potion that will make your cells keep dividing and working. You've spent another 10 years of your life doing this. Now you look very old, but the results of your 10 years of work is a failure. Like other scientists, you've concluded that your cells lose the ability to regenerate at a certain age. They can no longer compensate for the damage that various factors do to us. It was for this reason that the 3,000-year-old chief of the ancient tribe decided to hide in the pyramid. He isolated himself from any outside damage so that his body wouldn't be exposed to any danger. Locking yourself up in a safe place seems like the only way out. The air in the pyramid has no harmful bacteria, but was so dry that it turned the old man's body into a real mummy. Your money could allow you to build quite a posh greenhouse, so the inside of your mansion is lined with airtight plastic sheeting to protect you from bacteria. Every piece of interior furniture is now in its own film. You'll also have to wear a sealed spacesuit on Earth with a tank of purified air. And most importantly, several helicopters lower a glass dome onto your house. Now this aquarium is your home forever. Literally, forever. All of your guests and employees in the house must also wear airtight suits so as not to infect you with anything. Oh, it's dinner time. A few tubes of food. It looks disappointing. The thing about food is that there are bacteria and germs in it. Usually our bodies fight them easily, and we enjoy a burger without thinking about the problems. But your body might not be able to handle it. So from now on, you have to eat only specially processed food. A couple of decades later, you'll only be eating nutritional solutions to keep your stomach out of danger. But you can still go out for a walk. For that, you'll need an airtight bubble with a wheel, like the one that hamsters play with. You can walk the streets and admire your hometown, which gradually begins to resemble a futuristic movie. Neon signs, flying cars, holograms, and robots everywhere. Hey, it's your 200th birthday, and your gift to yourself is a special flying vehicle in which you can travel around the world safely without touching anyone or anything. All this technology has made you feel young again, but your face is sad. It's all about your brain. It ages like the rest of your body, and our brain, like a computer, has a memory limit. All your busy life, all your surfing and skydiving, they're all recorded on that computer as video files. And there are too many of those files out there. And when you record a new event in your brain, it deletes something old and unnecessary from your memory. For example, the formula for finding the area of a trapezoid. Naturally, you want to expand your memory. You can insert an extra flash drive in your brain. That solves the problem for the next few decades. But your body continues to age. In the year 2300, you read the news about a scientific breakthrough. They've created a computer you can transfer your consciousness to. And now, that computer is in your house. But you're scared. Our identity is our memories and our thoughts. But if you transfer them to a computer, will you still be you? Or will it be just a copy of you? And then what happens to you as a person? Fear and hopelessness take over you. Immortality is both a great gift and a great burden. You're all alone. Your family and friends aren't here with you 200 years after you became immortal. All you have now is an abnormally old body. And you're kind of angry at yourself for being immortal. You work in a large nature reserve that's home to more than 1,000 species of animals. At night, you drive through the territory in a Jeep to see if everything's okay. Most of the animals are sleeping. Suddenly, you hear the monkeys screaming. They jump from branch to branch. A herd of horses runs out of the forest. They look worried too. You hear many animals crying. Looks like some unknown strange thing has woken up and horrified the whole reserve. You see a flash in the night sky. It's a meteorite, and it's flying right towards you. You get in the car, hit the gas, and drive away as far as possible. The space rock falls right in front of you and throws your vehicle to the side. You pass out. The fallen meteorite emits some strange yellow energy. You're inside an overturned car, unconscious. All the animals have calmed down. Thousands of them silently approach the meteorite. Its energy envelops you and all the animals around. The more energy comes out, the smaller the space stone becomes. By the morning, the meteorite dissolves in the air. It has absorbed the animal powers and passed them on to you. You wake up in the grass near the car, surrounded by several people. These are the reserve employees and some guys in black suits. They study the crater in the ground and ask you what happened. You tell them about the meteorite, and they order you to go with them. One of them grabs you tightly by the shoulder You don't like it, and you want to break out. 2 men in black are holding you. You get angry and feel your muscles increase, and your skin becomes covered with fur. You quickly push the men away and roar. Your nails have turned into claws. You've received a bear's powers. Now you're just as strong and fierce. Agents in black are following you. You run away into the forest. You want to be faster and feel your spine changing its shape. Now you're running very fast on all fours. You've got the power of a cheetah, the fastest animal on Earth. You're hiding in the forest. The agents are far behind you. You hear a helicopter from above. It shines a bright spotlight beam. Oh no, they've noticed you. Agents use a megaphone to ask you to stop, but you know what awaits you. Labs, experiments, life in a cage. You've seen a lot of movies about it, so you won't just give up. You run out of the forest. They release darts at you. You quickly run to a large lake and dive inside. Webbing has grown on your arms and legs. Your feet are like flippers. Your legs fuse into one big tail, and you are now a walrus. You quickly swim across the lake and come ashore on the other side. Several cars and motorcycles are circling the lake to catch up with you. There's another forest ahead, but this time it's too dense. There's not enough space to develop great speed, but you can get the strength of a monkey. Your hands get longer and your fingers become stronger. You jump up a tree, climb to the top, and inspect the reserve. You need to go south and get to a small town to eat and drink. After a couple of hours, you reach the reserve's border. Now you have to jump over a high fence. Your legs are getting strong. You jump like a kangaroo, but it's not high enough. You fall to the ground. The helicopter catches up to you. You get lizard powers. You get sticky scales on your palms. You quickly climb the concrete wall and jump to the other side. You find yourself in the tall grass. Agents are coming to you from all sides. You're thinking about a snake. Your arms and legs fuse with your body. Now you can crawl. You pass all the people and find yourself on the road. You see a car in the distance. Raise your hand and ask it to stop. Oh no, it's the agent's vehicle. They surround you. The searchlight from the helicopter is shining right on you. You have nowhere to go. But you don't really have to go. Your clothes tear on your back. Huge wings grow out of your shoulder blades. You rise into the air. It's pretty cold here, but the feathers on your body protect you from the wind. Great, you can fly. It's incredible. Ouch! You feel like someone has pinched you from behind. It's a dart. They got you. You want to sleep and fly down. You make a hard landing near a small wooden house. Agents are running after you. You get the powers of another animal and pass out. People in black are searching the house territory, but can't find you. Maybe the dart with the sleeping pill didn't work on you? After a few minutes, they leave. Meanwhile, you're sleeping peacefully against the wall of the house. At the last second, you managed to get chameleon powers. You merged with the wall and became invisible. You sleep for a couple more hours. The dawn breaks. A rusty rover pulls into the yard. Some old man and a dog come out of there. It runs up to you and starts licking your face. The old man realizes that there's an invisible person in front of him. You come to your senses and tell the old man what happened to you. He gives you some food and clean clothes. You thank him and go away. Now you need to leave the country as soon as possible. You're thinking of a bat. Your legs become overgrown with wings and webbing. You have fangs. You fly without seeing anything. Your eyesight has gotten worse, but your hearing is just fantastic. You have echolocation power and can emit ultrasounds at a high frequency. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a scream of a familiar person. Oh no, it's that old man. The agents attacked him. You turn around and fly straight to the house. One of the agents sees you. He's screaming in terror. You land and think about a rhino. Your body becomes enormous and your nose gets longer. You accelerate and knock down several agents. Then you turn over their car, run into the house, and pull out the old man. He gets on your back as you're now a horse, and you ride far away from there. You reach the mountains. The old man looks tired but grateful for the adventure. You can't share his joy because you don't know how it will end. You ask the old man to hide while you distract the pursuers. You're thinking of an animal. Your legs and arms turn into hooves. You're jumping up a cliff like a mountain goat. They can't get you here. But at that moment, the helicopter appears again. The agent is aiming a dart at you. Needles are growing on your back. You've got porcupine powers. You release a couple of needles into the agent. It distracts him for a few minutes. At this moment, a cougar jumps at you out of nowhere. It scratches you with its claws. You think about a lion and get its powers. You get on your back feet and growl loudly. The cougar gets scared and runs away. The helicopter is flying up. You speed up, jump off a cliff, and get the powers of the fastest bird in the world, the peregrine falcon. You dive down at great speed and land in the forest. Now you need to find the old man. You have a nose like a dog. Now you can smell your friend and walk towards him. At this moment, you come up with an excellent plan for how to stop those people in black.
In the near future, people have made the greatest space discovery in history. The entire population of Earth looks up to the sky to see the greatest astronomical show ever. Is this real? What does it mean? Scientists have been studying galaxies, planets, and black holes millions of light years away. But all this time, something fantastic has been hiding in plain sight right above our eyes, on the moon. Starting a few years ago, humans began going to the moon again and finally set up a permanent base there. While excavating the lunar landscape, one lucky drill smashed into something like a metal plate. It turns out that metal contains polycarbonate, aluminum, gold, and silver. That's very similar to something humans already have on Earth. It's basically what CDs are made out of. People start going excavation crazy. Who knows what else is down there? The moon turns out to be our greatest resource. After a few months, lunar construction equipment has excavated several hundred feet of the shiny surface. At first, it was kept quiet, but a year later, that becomes impossible. Excavation crews dig out a huge rectangular shiny piece, the size of 10 football fields. And that plate is not alone. There are literally millions of them. After a little more research, scientists discover that the entire surface is covered with this strange material. People gaze up every night at the unusual moon in the starry sky. It glows a little brighter than before. You only need the most ordinary telescope to see that things are about to get weird. The excavation work isn't complete, but scientists have concluded that the moon is a huge disco ball. Who created it? For what? And what does this mean for us humans? No one has any answers. Soon, humans managed to dig up more than half of the moon. In some places, the plates are too deep to get to. They're stuck under mountains. In other places, the plates of the disco ball lie directly under the surface. Somehow, even with this crazy discovery, the properties of the moon haven't changed in any way, except that it's become brighter. Attempts to dig deeper, to pierce through the plates, are hopeless. The layer of polycarbonate and metal alloys is too thick and seems to go deep into the core of the moon. Some scientists suggest that if the moon's surface resembles a CD, it might just mean that there's some information recorded on it. That would change the course of history. They decide to build a laser reader to see if the moon really is a whopping big CD. Meanwhile, the drilling continues. On the dark side of the moon, which isn't always dark by the way, people find a small crater. Surprisingly, there's no shiny material inside. This perfectly round hole looks like a dried-up lake. At first, everyone assumes that there was a plate there. It just must have flown off somehow. But then, why was that crater so perfectly round? After a little more investigation, diggers find something that looks like plastic. What's that all about? Then, unexpectedly, the digging stops. The huge rig smashes against a thick alloy of unique durable plastic. There's a perfectly round plastic disc hiding inside the crater, the only one on the entire moon. It becomes clear that this huge disco ball was created by something billions of years ago. It's been covered with cosmic dust ever since. IT specialists scan the entire lunar surface with the help of satellites. They find something. It looks like there's a complex electronic system hidden under the disk. If you look at the moon as a whole, the crater starts to look an awful lot like, well, a button. Time to press play on the moon. To understand what's going on there, scientists try to get through the plastic layer. While they're doing that, there's an accident. An automatic drill explodes under insane pressure. The blast is so strong that it activates the button. All of humanity freezes in fear. There's silence, real silence. Then, it happens. The moon starts to rotate ever so slowly on its axis. Then, hour after hour, it rotates faster and faster. There's a mad rush to get everyone off the moon. Soon, it'll be spinning too fast to take off from safely. A lot of people fly halfway across the planet, where it's night, to see what's up with the moon. Every TV channel, website, blog, vlog, live stream, everyone's broadcasting the same images, those of the great disco ball in the sky. The moon begins to spin so fast that all the loose rock and sand on its surface gets scattered in different directions. Some lunar fragments fall on Earth and create an incredible meteor shower. The moon is spinning faster and faster. Now it looks like a real disco ball. The night sky is lit up with bright rays of white. It's incredible. People are ecstatic, amazed, delighted. But a moment later, all of humanity descends into a deep state of fear. Astronomers report that the moon is approaching Earth. When it gets too close, Earth's gravity will destroy it, and the giant crushed-up disco ball will smash into our planet. Every hour, the moon gets bigger in the night sky. Floods are starting to break out all over the world. People dust off their underground bunkers and get inside. There's no time to blast the moon with a rocket or anything like that. This could be it. The moon creeps closer and closer to the Earth's atmosphere. Then it stops, and nothing happens. Incredible! The disco ball isn't affected by our planet's gravity. Some sort of ancient technology inside the moon just saved us from disaster. Then, a deafening sound booms out from the night sky. It's coming from the disco ball. The sound wave obliterates all the clouds in the sky. It sounds like a roar, a deafening bass that makes the ground shake. It's intimidating, scary, but then a rhythm starts to come out from the wall of sound. Impossible! There's music coming right out of the moon. Then some plates start to change color. They turn purple, pink, blue, green. It looks wild. The different color rays dance around on the Earth's surface. It gives everyone an insane energy boost. Everyone wants to be outside with friends, neighbors, anyone. One moment, you're standing under a green glow, and a second later, everything around you gets lit up in pink. The incredible light show creates an unbelievable desire to dance. DJs around the world team up to record a whole new sound that mixes with the moon's music. They call it MLB, the Moon Light Beat. People all over the world go out into the streets and kick off the biggest party ever. Scientists now think that billions of years ago, our planet was inhabited by huge intelligent beings the size of Mount Everest. They wanted a party and set about creating a huge disco ball. Then these creatures moved on to another planet. Earth was getting kind of cramped, and the disco ball was simply forgotten. Over millions of years, dust and rock obscured it from view. For several months, the moon continues to spin, and DJs keep pumping out music. People start to get a bit tired of the whole thing. They want a bit of silence and a calm, starry sky, not a glittering moon disco ball. Humanity starts experiencing mass insomnia and dizziness. All flights are grounded because the bright-colored flashes make it impossible for pilots to see properly. Unfortunately, no one knows how to turn this thing off, and it's impossible to study because the moon's moving around too fast. The problem is solved by itself. The ball stops and returns to its orbit. It's possible that it just ran out of battery. People aren't exactly in a rush to reactivate it, but they leave detailed instructions for their descendants, in case they want to throw a global party. Okay, stay with me here. If you gathered together and weigh all the spiders in the world, you would get 250 million tons of arachnids. Wait. Before you run away, for comparison, the Titanic's weight was 52,000 tons, and the Great Pyramid of Giza is as heavy as 6.5 million tons. Well, you're right, that doesn't make me feel better either. But on we go. The biggest spider people know about is the South American Goliath bird eater. Yeah. This brown, furry, puppy-sized arachnid usually has a foot-long leg span. Its body is the size of a large fist, and its weight is more than 6 ounces. When the creature's moving, it makes bizarre, eerie sounds. They're the clicking of the spider's feet. They have hardened tips that hit the ground like a horse's hooves, just not as loud. If you see this imposing creature in the rainforest and come close to it, you might notice it rubbing its hind legs against its belly. How cute, that would be your first thought. But then you'd scream in pain. This spider protects itself by sending out clouds of hairs that have microscopic barbs on them. If they got in your eyes and nose, they'd be super painful and itchy. These hairs would also stay there for hours or even days. Now, that sounds extremely unsettling. But imagine what our planet would look like if spiders were the size of jeeps. The world occupied by giant arachnids is a dark and gloomy place. It's also dangerous. You can't let your guard down even for a second. Your enemy is lightning fast, hungry, and cunning. Normal-sized spiders eat 880 tons of insects each year. But in your world, huge monsters need much more food to live. Spiders roam the planet, gulping down pretty much any life form they see. If people gave up and didn't fight them, Earth would turn into a lifeless, barren land within a year. Up to 6% of people all over the globe have arachnophobia, extreme fear of spiders. But if these creatures were that much larger, this number would be way bigger, you think? Picture a creature more than 5 feet tall with a leg span of 14 feet. The spider's covered in coarse, thick hair, which makes the animal look disgusting. Its body is divided into 2 parts, separated in the middle by a slim waist. A set of massive jaws, terrifyingly long and sharp fangs, and 8 spherical eyes, as huge as basketballs. But the creepiest of them all? Spiders without eyes. They live in caves and other dark places. If you meet such a specimen, your reaction won't be fast enough to escape. These creatures compensate for their lack of vision by feeling vibrations. They also have an astonishing sense of smell. Terrified of spiders, people constantly invent new ways to get rid of them. Being caught by a creature several times your size is everyone's biggest nightmare. One of the scariest things about spiders is the way they deal with insects they catch. Most of these predators don't eat their prey whole. At first, it gets cocooned in silk and injected with the spider's digestive fluid. It paralyzes the prey and makes its insides liquid. That's not good. Then the creature pulls everything edible into its stomach through the hairs covering its mouth and pincer-like jaws. In other words, once a monster spider gets you, there's no way to escape. Oh, and don't forget about horrifying spider webs. Who hasn't ended up with their face covered with sticky threads at least once in your life? In your new reality, though, spotting a web in time means getting a chance to survive. Even regular-sized spiders can create webs that cover trees and houses and stretch over rivers for 80 feet. That's why if a new world creature chooses your house as its new home, it's easier and safer to move out as fast as you can. People have found a way to deal with giant spider webs, but how they do it depends on which species has created it. If the web was produced by a spider that's more active at night, people destroy them with help of UV lamps that replace sunlight. The webs made by spiders living in dry areas are afraid of liquid. Those from humid environments don't like getting dry, and so on. Another problem. One day you may come home and discover a huge monster, or 50 of them, living in your basement. Okay, admittedly, you're likely to spot these creatures before they reach any impressive size. They'll be too loud to go unnoticed. Spiders don't give birth to their babies. They create egg sacs that can contain hundreds of eggs. If such a sac somehow ends up in your home, you've got a problem on your hands. In a couple of weeks, those eggs hatch into baby spiders. After that, it can take from 2 weeks to 1 year for the babies to reach their full size. Oh, by the way, people have figured out how to use spider webs. The silk they're made of is very light. If it was a tiny regular spider, a strand of its silk long enough to circle Earth would weigh a mere 18 ounces. In a spider, dozens of times larger. Silk threads weigh more, but they're also much stronger. They can withstand extreme temperatures from -40 to 430 degrees Fahrenheit. People know how to collect spider silk. They use this material to make ultra-strong ropes. Almost all fabrics in the world are made from spider's threads. Wear-resistant and lightweight clothing, seatbelts and parachutes, bottles and cups, surgical threads and bandages, rust-free panels on cars and boats, artificial ligaments and tendons, all thanks to spiders. But probably the best thing about silk, it's biodegradable. Earth has become a much cleaner place since people started using this material in production. Along with using spider silk threads, people also gather the glue covering the webs. It's a unique substance. It stays wet in the open air and is still sticky after having trapped several insects. Up close, this glue looks like tiny beads on a string, or rather golf-sized balls on the rope if we're talking about car-sized arachnids. They produce much stickier glue than good old regular-sized spiders. That's why, in most cases, it replaces hammers and nails. All kinds of vehicles and vessels are built with the use of spider glue. The only drawback of this sticky substance, you have to be extra careful while gathering it. Once you get trapped, it's a tricky feat to escape. That's why people go glue hunting in large groups. But even if you get into a spider web by accident, there's a chance to survive if you're fast enough. Moths and butterflies have a special layer of scales on their wings. They can shed this layer if they get caught. Use this trick, take off your clothes and run for your life. But how come spiders don't get tangled in their own webs? These arachnids can spin sticky and non-sticky silk. They avoid walking on the sticky parts of their webs. Plus, they have special movable claws on their feet. These claws grip and let go of the threads when they're moving. Also, spiders' feet are covered with thousands of hairs. When they walk, these hairs create countless points of contact between the animal and the surface. That's why you can see gigantic spiders lounging on rooftops or climbing skyscrapers. By the way, when the terrifying creatures do move, they do it at breakneck speed. The giant house spider is one of the fastest spider species in our world. It can move at a speed of almost 2 feet per second. That's more than a mile per hour. But creatures as large as a Jeep can speed up to 50+ miles per hour. In other words, you wouldn't be able to escape from them by driving away. In the giant spider world, people have to install tons of artificial lights. Dense, thick spider webs are everywhere. They appear throughout the night and cover large areas, making days dim. Trees and not-so-sturdy constructions often collapse under the weight of spider silk. Luckily, it's just an imaginary world. Spiders can't grow to be as large as a car. Long story short, their hormones prevent these creatures from becoming larger than they're supposed to be. Whew.
We're so used to the things our body does to keep us alive each day that we barely ever think about the mechanisms of sleeping, talking, breathing, or even blinking. But what would happen to your body if you stopped doing each of these things all of a sudden? How long would it be before it became a problem? Not that I've ever considered taking some sort of vow of silence, but I do sometimes wonder what would happen if I just stopped talking altogether. Would I lose my voice forever at one point? Let's look at what specialists at Columbia University have to say. First of all, our vocal cords are muscles, so they do need a workout every now and then to stay in shape. If you stop speaking, these muscles would start to get weaker after a while. As a result, your voice would become quieter, and its pitch would get higher. Even worse, this might make it sound hollow, and basically, it would be harder for you to speak overall. In a way, it's one of those situations where if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, kind of. Luckily, breathing and eating would enter into the equation here. These processes would keep your muscles in some shape. Plus, no matter how long you kept silent, it wouldn't do any permanent damage. And once you started using your vocal cords again, your voice would be back. We all know what might happen if we stopped washing. We'd smell. But let's look at it from a scientific point of view. How about an experiment where a person stops showering for a whole year? Depending on its type, A person's skin would initially become either extremely oily or very dry. The oiliest parts of their body, like behind the ears and the neck, would collect dust and pollutants and even change color. As for their head, it would get very itchy because of all that skin buildup. And after such a long time of not having a proper cleaning routine, it could take weeks to get the skin back to normal. It may sound like a vacation of sorts, but let's look at what would happen if you never got out of bed. One of the first organs to feel the change would be our lungs. Without gravity to pull them down into their standard position, their lower part would crease. But coughing every now and then would help to reduce this effect. Going further, you'd start to lose about 1% of your bone density with each passing week. This would make your bones more fragile. By the way, it's also the reason why astronauts, who can go for months without experiencing gravity, need to move around for at least 2 hours a day and make sure they have enough calcium in their diet. That same 1% would also apply to your muscle mass. You'd first start to see the effects of this lack of movement in your thighs and shoulders. The unused sugars that previously went to the muscles would start to build up in the blood system after about 10 days. After a whole month in bed, your heart would end up pumping 30% less blood with each beat. There would be less oxygen in your body, and you'd feel even more tired, which sounds kind of surprising. After all, you'd spend the entire month in bed. What would happen if you held your breath for too long? Let's have a look at the timeline. Firstly, the oxygen levels in your brain would decrease, followed by a higher level of carbon dioxide. Usually your body gets rid of this gas pretty fast when you breathe out. After about 60 seconds, the cells in your body would start to behave differently than they normally do. All body parts would be affected by the sudden change. Your heart would start to beat irregularly. If you didn't begin to breathe even at this point, you'd most likely end up fainting. Similar to so many other mammals, we humans have a diving response. This is a built-in automated mechanism that you come equipped with. It makes sure that your brain always has enough oxygen, even in an emergency situation. This diving response starts working extra hard every time your face ends up in the water, but it can happen on dry land as well. Its main aim is to make sure your brain continues functioning, no matter the cost. So, it orders your body to redirect all the blood from non-essential body parts, like legs or arms, to the brain. Now, what would happen if you stopped blinking? Or if you didn't blink frequently enough? Firstly, your corneas would likely increase in size. The cornea is the only part of your body that doesn't have a blood supply, but it still needs oxygen to function properly, and it gets it straight from the air. By the way, that's the reason why your cornea swells up, just a bit, when you sleep. But it goes back to normal in the morning. Then, your eyes would probably start to dry out because the tear film wouldn't get restored. What does this mean? Mostly some pain and blurry vision. Blinking also helps with removing all dirt and dust from your eyes. And if you stop moving your eyelids, things would most likely get stuck in your eyes and cause serious damage. We take chewing for granted, don't you think so? But come to think of it, it's the first stage of digestion. Chewing helps your stomach to process the food you eat more easily by breaking it into smaller parts. Chewing less, or not at all, should you ever resort to a full liquid diet, might cause harm not only to your digestive system, but, surprisingly, to your jaw muscles as well. Without regular chewing movements, your facial features would change pretty soon. Chewing also lets your stomach know when it's time to increase its acidity so it can process food better. Your senses are a huge part of your day-to-day lives, and here's a neat trick that the human brain can do. When one sense is lost or damaged, another can become much more heightened. People with bad eyesight may be able to hear better, while those who have problems with their hearing might have some sort of enhanced vision. Recent research has shown that the brain can actually remodel itself, giving more power to other senses when one is damaged or missing. They noticed this in microscopic roundworms. They have a peculiar behavior when they have a poor sense of touch. Then, their sense of smell becomes super sensitive, and they manage to seek out food sources with a very faint scent. Similarly, some visually impaired people have something in common with bats. Such people basically learn to use their boosted hearing to navigate the world more efficiently. They make a series of rapid clicking noises. This is just how bats use their built-in sonar to find their way when there's no light. Your brain is home to 86 billion neurons. It shouldn't come as a surprise that it also has some sort of a backup plan when some of its parts fail, right? But then there's another question. Why aren't our senses heightened from the very beginning? I mean, we're obviously born with this capability, so why don't we just activate it by default? The explanation is a bit complex. Mostly, it all comes down to your body's inability to work really hard for extended periods of time. To be more precise, your body is always looking to obtain and maintain a certain balance in order to function properly. When one sense is deprived, another needs to be sharper. More so, all these changes in our senses, depending on the circumstances, appear to be reversible. This yet again illustrates the human body's need to function in harmony.
Okay, I'll say it. Which came first, a chicken or an egg? And what will disappear first? Well, let's imagine it will be an egg. At some point, all the chicken eggs on the planet disappear just like that. Humanity will lose the omelet and delicious pastries. But the worst thing is that the chickens will lose the ability to reproduce. They will disappear from the face of the earth forever. And this is an absolute tragedy because chickens are one of the most fantastic birds in the world, and people will realize this as soon as they lose them. So let's start. The eggs have disappeared. The morning on the farms began with chicken screams. It seems the birds have gone mad. They crow and cackle non-stop. Farmers don't know what's going on. They launch soporific gas into the chicken coops to calm the birds. When they fall asleep, people check what's wrong with them and discover that all the eggs have disappeared. And this is happening all over the world. The shares of chicken enterprises are collapsing. The bakery stops working because baking without eggs is not so delicious. And then serious problems begin. Billions of chickens wake up and find that their eggs are gone. Their offspring are gone. The chickens are terrified. They think people stole it from them. Birds get angry, attack farmers, and escape from coops. People don't take any measures since they don't want to harm the birds. They shouldn't be stressed. Let them throw out all the emotions. Perhaps those are the last chickens on Earth, so humanity lets them enjoy their freedom. In addition, all coops are now useless. It's not profitable to keep chickens there. But they don't need freedom. They need eggs. Chickens cover the fields like a giant blanket. They run past forests and clearings. It seems that this is the dream of any wolf. But as soon as this beast appears on the horizon, the chickens immediately attack it. Wolf packs can't withstand millions of chickens, so they retreat. Then the chickens come to the cities. Scientists are trying to solve the problem of missing eggs. They want to clone chickens, and until they do, people are forbidden to catch them. All the streets belong to these birds. The cars' horns and police sirens mix with the loud clucking of chickens. The metropolis turns into a huge coop. Billions of feathers fly in the air. These birds peck trees, wheels on cars, ruin shops, and tear packages with grain. People are hiding in houses. Chickens flood every building in the city. Worldwide news talks about the chaos that the chickens have created. But then they calm down. The chickens forget that they have lost their offspring. They're not angry anymore. Now they're quietly walking the streets. People come out of hiding and start living with chickens in peace and harmony. Meanwhile, the prices of the remaining eggs in stores are increasing hundreds of times. Now, you need to pay at least $1,000 to eat an omelet. But of course, it doesn't last long. After 2 months, all the eggs get spoiled. Sooner or later, the world loses the omelet. Croissants, cakes, buns, donuts, and other pastries lose their great taste. Cooks can't bake delicious food without egg yolk. Dishes lose their tenderness, splendor, and shape. Some cooks replace chicken eggs with goose and quail eggs, but it's much more challenging to get them than chicken eggs. Prices are rising every day. People don't buy croissants with coffee anymore. Many bakeries are losing profits. People learn to live without egg yolk, but then everyone forgets about it. Chickens live side by side with city residents. There are fewer and fewer birds left. They grow old, but new ones aren't born. And at this moment, everyone begins to realize that these cute birds can disappear from the face of the earth forever. There will be no more morning crowing, no more cute little yellow chickens. There will be no more coops and feathers. Almost the entire population of the planet becomes vegetarian to support chickens mentally. People didn't realize how much they love these birds. Humanity is watching with tears the last years of the oldest chickens. Farmers are in a severe depression. They remember how they went to the coop every morning and collected eggs. Now they can find nothing but cobwebs and straw. People in cities make chicken tattoos and draw graffiti with birds on the walls. Sculptors create beautiful statues of chickens. People clean chickens' feathers, feed them the best grains, and create fake golden eggs to reduce their stress levels. The most fabulous directors make movies about chickens. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars to develop computer models of talking birds. Musicians and beatmakers record chicken sounds and create unique songs. Every person considers it their duty to take care of a chicken. They live with birds as pets, walk with them, take selfies, and record videos. Now the chickens are absolute superstars. Of course, pigeons, crows, sparrows, and other birds don't like this. They don't get enough food and attention from people. Birds fly away from megacities. Now only running chickens remain on the streets. But unfortunately, they can't live forever. Chickens are getting old. They don't move as fast as they used to. They develop illnesses and injuries. The best veterinarians are fighting for the life of every bird. They perform complex operations and install prostheses to cure sick chickens. Billionaires invest a lot of money to prolong the life of these animals. They use the most advanced technologies in genetic engineering and cybernetics. And now, the first cyborg chickens appear. They have metal beaks, laser-red eyes, polyurethane claws, and wings made of ultralight carbon steel. Scientists try to connect to the bird brain's neurons to find out what the chicken is thinking about. A special program simulates the brainwaves and turns them into sound. People hear their thoughts, but they don't think about anything except co. Chickens turned into mechanized machines, but their brains are still organic. By this time, scientists have created chicken clones. They are as natural as real birds, but they can't lay eggs. Fewer and fewer chickens walk the streets every day. There are thousands, then hundreds, then only dozens of them. Finally, there are only 2 chickens left. They go off into the sunset. People are watching their last journey. They mourn and weep with grief. The birds are moving away and disappearing into the horizon. People will remember this day forever, the final day of the last chickens. In this sad time, scientists have found a way out. They have uncovered the chicken DNA gene, which means they can create these birds anew. Biologists are building the oldest DNA genome, the genome from which the evolution of chickens began. Scientists put all the genetic information inside an artificial egg and wait. And finally, the moment of truth has come. Cracks appear on the egg. The little chicken comes out of the shell in its original evolutionary form. And this is a little Tyrannosaurus. It turns out that this dinosaur is the ancestor of the modern chicken. T-Rex has a similar body shape. It moves like a chicken. Over millions of years of evolution, the ancient lizard has shrunk in size. They lost their scales and grew feathers. Then they got a beak instead of toothy jaws. Scientists are growing a Tyrannosaurus. It's getting bigger and bigger every month. People create huge farms to keep the dinosaurs there. Lizards begin to multiply. People don't know how to control them. Some giant reptiles escape from farms and wreak havoc in cities. In theory, a Tyrannosaurus takes tens of millions of years to turn into a chicken again. No one is ready to wait that long. Everyone wants the chickens back as soon as possible. Fortunately, scientists managed to speed up the process. Decades pass, tyrannosaurs are shrinking in size. Accelerated evolution turns them into birds. And finally, people get those chickens that they lost. They're laying eggs again. Harmony and happiness have returned to the world. But then, pigs started disappearing, and with it, bacon. Breakfast was broken once again. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and